Hey everyone, Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Today I'm talking cold water fish. Now, I want to set the tone because whenever I talk about fish that might not need a heater, everyone goes, but not at my house or my country or my thing. So basically, it's in your home, but without supplying a direct heater in the aquarium. You might run your home at 70, you might run it at 60, you might run it cooler, all the same. These fish, some of them I've had with ice over the top of them in ponds outside. So I just want to give you a few of my favorites that I've fallen in love with because I feel like there's a lot of the same old, same olds. So first and foremost, paradise fish, one of the oldest fish to ever be in the tropical fish trade. They can go subtropical or cool water. They're kind of like unheated bettas. But you can usually keep more than a pair. I'm actually keeping a group of 6 right now in a 40 breeder. The tank temperature is about 71 degrees, and even though they're labeled as aggressive, they're getting along just fine so far. They live with a few tetras and things like that, but yeah, they'll eat shrimp, and they can get a little ornery. They do breed and things like that, but they are beloved around the world. They're just not super duper common. I think it's because they've got the bad reputation to them, kind of like tiger barbs do, where when you set them up right, they're really enjoyable fish. And so that's why I wanted to highlight them as like the number one here is they're super cool. You can get them in albino varieties, like a fire red, more of a blue. You can get them in black. There's a bunch of them, and there's even competitions for them. But they're just not as common at the pet store, and I think it's because when people Google them, they're not so stoked on them. And so hopefully this video will help that. So let me know down below if you've kept paradise fish and if other people should as well. Next up, I have rice fish. Now, I stumbled upon rice fish many, many years ago. I think I filmed them over 10 plus years ago before they'd really hit the United States. And I fell in love with them when I was visiting Japan. They were very popular. They had magazines, they had their own food, they had this whole culture going on. And why had we never heard of it? I don't know. But the Japanese climate was very close to my climate, and so I thought I could probably keep these outside. And I've basically been doing that for the last 10 years. So much so that even ice on the pond an inch or two thick, still okay. So for sure, they will do okay in your house if they can weather that outside. And so I'm talking about the Medaka rice fish. There's some there's some Daisy's rice fish. There's a few others, but most of the ones that if you just Google rice fish, you're going to go, wow, that looks nice. That's a platinum, or that's an orange, or that's a lame, or whatever it is. Easy to keep, easy to feed, easy to breed also. So they've got a lot of perks to them. You can find them in a lot of mom and pop stores around the world now. And so expect to pay somewhere between $5 and $15 US roughly. The more exotic you get, they can get into hundreds of dollars. And the more basic you get, they can get down to about that $5 range. And so keeping a group of them, they'll lay eggs on plants or spawning mops and things that you make. Relatively easy to raise the eggs in a bowl. Or if you just have a pond or a big enough tank, you'll just find fry. And if you feed something like our Magic Small Fish feed or live brine shrimp or something like that, they're not too hard to raise up at all. Next up, I want to talk about cherry shrimp or Neocaridina shrimp. There's blues, there's yellows, there's oranges, there's reds, there's Bloody Marys, there's, Mountain Dew color. There's a bunch of varieties. There's blacks, black rose, all of these kind of things, right? For the most part, they're all the same shrimp. And they all do really well. Again, this is another thing that I've kept outside for many years and ice on the ponds. And so that means that they will also do well in unheated tanks in your house. And so I basically treat them like they're aquatic cockroaches. I kind of can't get rid of them. They look amazing and I love them, and they're in so many of my tanks. And so I can't help but bring those up. If you were trying to save money on power or just wanted to make a really low tech tank, cherry shrimp in particular thrive at that. Now, there's some other shrimps that can do that too, but what's nice about cherry shrimps or Neocaridina shrimp is if you meet another hobbyist and they've got shrimp, most likely they're making a ton of them and they have some they can kind of spare or sell you cheaply. In a pet store for just a basic cherry shrimp, you're probably looking at $5 and up. You can get into some very high-end strains that are very expensive, and the gamut of like, here's all the colors are usually under $10. And they're easy to breed. If you just have males and females together and not too many predators, meaning other fish that want to eat their babies. Give it time and food, you'll pretty much just make more, assuming that they're not getting sucked into your filter or you have things eating them. So that's nice about it, but it does take time to grow them, and so that's why they do still have value to them, and everybody wants them, and they're good for every tank, and they can be amazing food sources for turtles and puffers and cichlids and all kinds of things, even just other livebearers. So I would say that, a million uses and a million wants means they've got some value to them, and you should give them a try if you haven't. Next up, we're talking about Rosy Barbs. I featured them in this tank for so long. I love them, especially the long fin ones. The males are bright red and the females are more of a gold color. Easy to breed. You guys may have seen on the channel, I've done that a bunch. There's babies in lots of tanks. I keep moving them around, and my strategy for breeding them is males and females, let them hang out in a tank for a week or two, and then move them. And you'll get fry, and they'll just eat magic small fish feed or brine shrimp or crushed up flake or whatever you got. And that's fulfilling, right? You can get more complicated and set up, containers with false bottoms and really crank out production. But I mostly just want to observe them and enjoy them. Now, they are really good hair algae eaters, I found. In fact, this tank behind me is starting to get some black beard algae because they don't have the Rosy Barbs in it anymore. However, being that they're always eating at the hair algae, they will also pick at finer leaf plants and things. And so if you keep breeding them and you make a ton, pretty soon you can be like, hey, my plants are starting to dwindle because you have so many big adult fish and they're just hungry. Even if you feed them spirulina and things like that, they just want to eat and pick at stuff. So, if you have a few in a big tank, they'll really cut down on the algae, but you're probably going to fall in love with them and you're going to want to get more or breed them. They're a fish that are, as far as I can tell, always under about $10. In our store, they're $6 roughly, 6-7 depending longfin or not. They also have the neon version as well. So there's a couple longfin, shortfin, couple color morphs, and again, no heat. I haven't kept them outside with ice year round yet, but that's on my to-do list because they've been very, very hardy. They've been in my garage tanks before. But I haven't pushed them to like ice level. Instead, it's like, yeah, for sure they thrive in unheated aquariums, just in normal like house temperatures. But not everything has to have ice to be enjoyable. Next up, we've got the Reticulated Hillstream Loach. Now, this one looks like an alien sucker face, especially when it's up on the glass looking at you. Good news is they're kind of like your cold water pleco. They'll eat algae on surfaces, so big broadleaf plants, glass, rocks, things like that. They're not too hard to breed. I've bred them in very hot water, all the way in the 85s, and in cool water. I've done it in big tanks. I've done it in smaller tanks. Just male and female, feed them really well. One of the tips, if you're having trouble, affording food or something, put fish poop and rocks outside in water, let the sunlight grow a bunch of algae, bring them inside, let them cool off. That's a trick there. You take a really hot rock and you just put it in your aquarium, it'll raise the temperature, and you don't always want that in the summer. So let them cool off overnight, then put them in your aquarium. They'll clean them up, and it's a great source for if they're having babies and just the adults getting them ready to breed. They'll eat normal fish foods and stuff like that, so no problem, whether it's frozen food, whether it's dry food. They pretty much do it all, and they get along with most other things. Like everything else on the list, like, yeah, you could keep those, and they look cool. They've got a really cool pattern to them. There's a few different varieties as well. And, I would say these fish are not as cheap. They're, I would say, on average, $15 to $20 a piece. They're also a pain in the butt to catch at a fish store. And so give some leeway to that employee when they're trying to get them off the glass. They're basically one giant suction cup on there, and they don't want to let go. But, you can keep them as few as one. You can keep them in a group to breed them. In general, great fish. I recommend keeping them in a 10-gallon or more, but I've done it in less as well. So just make sure you're getting them that food. If you have a bunch of fish in there, you just toss some food in. They're not the most outgoing eaters, and so you want to make sure that they're still getting a snack. Next up, Swordtails. I think Swordtails kind of peaked in the 80s and early 90s, and then kind of fell off. And I think they need to make a comeback because they're a great fish. They're a community fish. They give birth to live fish, which is amazing. And they can go fairly cool water. I've kept them, different strains over the years, down into kind of the upper 50s. But I've got a strain right now that'll go down in the low 40s. And so, not every single strain will probably be as tolerant as that. But there's enough strains out there that in your unheated aquarium in your house should be just fine. And yeah, Swordtails bring in a lot of color. You know, you can get the oranges, you can get the reds, you can kind of get some of the little blues and greens in there if you're going more wild coloration. They get, you know, kind of that 3-inch body. Males get a big sword to them. The females just kind of get nice and plump. And yeah, a male and 2 females, and in a tank that's like 20 gallons or up. I mean, the more you give them, the bigger your fish are going to get. So you know, great choice. And for the most part, they'll go with everything else. They might pick at the cherry shrimps a little bit, so you might want to get that colony going first, but great fish. Next up, we've got the flagfish, sometimes called the Florida flagfish. This is a killie out of Florida, and they're great like black-bearded algae eaters and just hair algae eaters in general. In fact, that's what I'm going to add to this tank. Behind me is some flagfish, just to have something different for people to look at when I live stream. But they get the name because they kind of look like an American flag or something on the side of them. And not too difficult to breed, very tolerant of water parameters and temperatures, and they'll eat just about anything. They can be a little bit ornery if you're keeping, you know, multiple males in a 10-gallon tank or a 5-gallon tank. They can get a little territorial, but like back here, I'll probably put 4 to 6 fish and keep it at least 50-50, so 50% male, 50% female. Or if we just happen to have extra females, I'll do 2 and 4 probably. And yeah, they won't really breed in. I mean, well, they'll breed in there, but they won't raise up fry in there. You'd have to do some work with spawning mops or collecting eggs to raise them. But another great fish, draws attention going, hey, that's a unique fish. Hey, it's picking at stuff. So that's a good point. While it eats algae, most things that do this, that pick at hair algae and stuff, finer plants like dwarf baby tears and normal baby tears and just softer leaf plants, they can get pulled out by fish that would eat that algae. And so if you have Anubias and Java ferns and Bulbitis and Apontigitans and so many of the other plants that will do just fine, they'll thrive and keep them very clean for you. If you have delicate, like in there, I've got some guppy grass, they're likely to pull that apart. But that's okay, because they're going to clean up everything else, and the guppy grass grows so fast that it probably won't be an issue for me. Next up, Endler's Livebearer. Now, specifically Endler's Livebearer, I find to be incredibly tolerant of temperature and of water parameters in general. Guppies, not so much. So we're specifically talking about Endler's Livebearer. Males have all the color, few different color varieties and things like that. You know, there's different classes as well. N class, you know, which is more wild, and you know, all the way to the hybrids where it's an Endler with a guppy of like, hey, look at those LT grays, or you know, bumblebees and that kind of stuff. Fish doesn't get too big. Males and females. Keep more females than males. They're a live bear, so they give birth to live fish. I haven't kept them with ice outside, but I've kept them in unheated turtle tanks and things like that in my garage, and they've always just been like, wow, that is a hardy fish. And what I would point out here is much more so than guppies. If you've ever had guppies like, oh, well, they got sick and I didn't really thrive, Endler's Livebearers will be the opposite experience for you. They will be like, wow, these things are just really hardy. They're really good. The only downfall is there is a lot of silver in that fish, and the females are pretty bland. The males get those splashes of color, but you get the robustness in them, and I think that's a big selling point for a lot of fish, especially when you go in unheated tanks. Next up, a rarer fish, the red-tailed Goodeids, or Zenataka eiseni, or Dorderai, or, you know, however many not morphs, but renamings there's been over the years since I've been keeping them. This is another type of livebearer. Kind of has more orangey red on the tail and a little bit of color on the front. And they're a livebearer, but what's cool about them is they're not like other livebearers where here's a billion babies. They're more like here's 4 or 6 babies, and they have umbilical cords, and they're just a fish that can go really cold. I've kept them almost to ice on top of the water. They were in the garage, and it was really cold. It was so cold, hands in there would cramp up and hurt. That's how cold that water was, but it was not technically frozen out there, and they thrived. And so I can recommend them to go in any household, basically. They're not going to be easy. You're going to have to get them at like Dan's Fish or some kind of specialty retailer. And they don't sell great to pet stores. They don't sell great out of pet stores. And they don't love being super hot. So if you have a house that gets really cold and then also gets really hot, this might not be the fish for you. They like to stay under about 76 or so. They'll tolerate 80, 82 for short periods of time. But yeah, and they also don't give birth as often, so they have a longer gestation period. I feel like it's every couple months you get some babies. You can keep a nice colony going in a tank for a very long time without being overrun like you might with some of the other Livebearers. And again, being all fish basically, I always want to have more females than males, except for there's a few fish out there like Crebensis that breaks that trend. But in general, keeps a more mellow tank. Last on my list, but not least by any means, Leopard Danios. Now, there's so many Danios that can go in unheated tanks, but specifically Leopard Danios, and then even another level if you go the longfin Leopard Danios. They're not super common in stores. Whenever I bring them in, they don't sell that well, but the people that buy them fall in love with them, like I've fallen in love with them. I think they're one of the best looking Danios, and what blows my mind is this is a fish we get to sell for $2, $3, $3.50. Like, it's a very cheap fish, and yet it looks just as good as some fish that are $10, $15. And so, being they're so hardy and they've been around for so long, they typically don't bring in too many diseases. They're just a really robust fish, and that's why I recommend them. They're super active. They'll be on the top of the water column, and that long fin slows them down a little bit, which is nice. But they eat almost anything. Now, breeding them, it's not that you can't do it. It's the fry are so small when they hatch out. You can almost not even see eggs when they lay them. So you have to go in with some pretty strong intentions of, hey, I'm going to do this, and it can be done, but you might be using some infusoria or paramecium cultures and things like that. That being said, because they have big batches, they're done in mass quantity, and they can be very cheap. It's one of the few fish in the market that are very cheap, and the fact they don't have to be heated. There's all these things that fish farms can kind of mass produce them on the cheap, which means you can roll in and for like $20 walk out with a group of 6 and really enjoy that fish. And I recommend at least 6 if you can do more, especially as the tank gets bigger, right? So maybe it's 6 for a 10-gallon. Like, oh, you got a 20? Let's try 8. You got a 55? Let's try like 15 of them. Very active fish though, and they don't typically get too many problems with dropsy or funguses or bacterial infections. They're just a real hardy fish. And I always hesitate to say whether a fish is hardy or not, because all fish kind of are hardy if you take care of them right. But these have way more tolerance for mistakes, I would say. And so being that they're that aspect to them makes it a lot easier if you're new to the hobby or there's a long supply chain before they get into your hands. So yeah, Leopard Danios, take a look. If you haven't kept them, do, and let me know. And if you have kept them, put a comment down below, because I feel like this fish, like half the people don't even know it exists, and the other half are going, yeah, it's amazing. I did those for like 12 years, then they finally died off, and I just haven't done them again. And very few people are like, oh, I didn't like them, outside of maybe new to the hobby and put them with wrong things. Like, you wouldn't put these guys with your bettas, like, oh, it's tearing at my betta. Like, yeah, it's a faster fish, but a lot of the other stuff I listed, it would go great with those. So those are some suggestions. Give them a try. Let me know in the comments below, and not just me, everybody else that's reading and watching this, what you like in your unheated setups, because we crowdsource all information, and this hobby wouldn't exist unless we were all trying things. Everything started in nature. We started putting them in glass boxes, and then we started talking, hey, this worked and that didn't work. What about you? That worked and that didn't work? Great, I'll try that. So yeah, if you need any supplies, check us out on aquariumcoop.com. Otherwise, check out this video, and we'll see you in the next one.